What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So in this video, I do want to talk about another idea I had for the new island in Motorfest. Now, we all do know this is obviously coming out in November. We still don't know a ton on this stuff, but we're obviously going to know more on like that live stream in September, and I'm really hoping we're probably going to get more information on one thing. That is actually going to be bigger events in the game. Now, I do know a lot of people might be like, Block, what are you talking about, dude? We don't need bigger events. But hear me out for a second, though, guys. We currently have the Liberty territory in the game. This is obviously going to be the longest race in the entire game if you want to do that one. It's going to pay around 95 to 100,000 depending on your part set. And I would say that is pretty decent. It takes around 10 to maybe 13 minutes. But here's the thing, though. We're obviously getting an entire map added into the game. So we're obviously going to have Maui and, of course, Oahu. And there is going to be a large bridge connecting both of the islands. So why not add some bigger events to the game that basically take you around Oahu and go around the entire island of Maui at the same time, or that would be dope. Sure, the events might be around 15 to 20 minutes or even longer if they did that. Would you guys actually like something like this if they did add a race or even races into the game that are going to be longer than something like the Liberty territory? I would say a lot of players might be like, yes, dude, we need longer events. Am I the only one that really liked doing the longer races in the crew too? Like we had the Detroit event, we had the LA to Seattle, and of course we also had that main event that everybody loved, which was New York. I would say having longer events, now don't get me wrong, I do know the map is smaller and stuff like that. Even with the island, you can't have like a 30-minute race across both islands. I would say a lot of players are most likely not going to want to do something like that, but at least if we had something around 15 to 20 minutes or so, basically going around all of Maui and most of the Oahu Island, that would be so dang fun, man. Also, being able to use any class, of course, on it, similar to the Liberty territory being changed after the game came out, but I would say a lot of players would absolutely love having larger events. Now, with that, though, we obviously are going to have some changes if the events are bigger. One of those are obviously going to have to be more money being paid out in XP, so like, how much would you get from a 15 or 20-minute event? To be honest, I would probably say it has to be around 150,000 base. Like, you really can't go under that. Like, around a 15-minute race, a pretty long time. And if we were having something like a 15 to 20-minute event, $150,000 based on that event is pretty dang fair. The reason for that is you can make a lot more money doing something like PvP if you want to where doing some of the events in there, like even the three-part races, like, you know, Street Tier 2, Hypercar, and Boats, or whatever that ended up coming out. If you were to do something like that, it's probably going to be around 70 to 80,000, and you can also make even more depending on if they have like that weird 25% boost thing active. So why not have more of the money being out from the actual events in the game itself? Now, the big thing here, though, is we do obviously know the update is going to be in November, which currently from around this time is around 4 months away. So I'm really hoping they actually have some really dope stuff planned, like a big event or a bunch of bigger races that are going to make the islands actually connected. Like, imagine guys being able to do longer races, getting 150,000 base. Throw on something like a buck set or something and get like 180. That would be so dope. The reason why I also really want this is the only way to make a lot of money is currently the Liberty Territory event, which I honestly have to say this right now, I think that event is also going to be an underpaid event. Like, you're racing for around 10 to 12 minutes in most of the classes, and some of them, you're going to be around 12 to 14 minutes. Only making around $90,000 is legit pretty dang terrible, considering you can jump onto Grand Race and make even more money doing that, and it's quicker. So they really should actually increase the pay on some of the bigger events, or I guess in some ways they could probably increase the pay on every single event. Let me know what you guys think about that. Do you think every single event should have a pay increase? I mean, if you're trying to buy a $3 million car, making 10 grand from an event, you are most likely going to be here a while trying to grind out events in order to buy some of these vehicles, making 10 grand on a single event. So I would say having longer races is going to be pretty dang dope in the game. I mean, even at the moment, guys, there is not going to be a ton of events that are even that long, and even if they are a bit longer, they don't pay all that much money. Like, the funny thing about this, though, is when I first was doing the Liberty Territory, yes, I enjoy the event. It's actually going to be a very fun race, but again, though, around 12 to 14 minutes in a certain vehicle class like the Tier 1 category, or something that's even going to be slower than Alpha GP or Hypercars, you are at least going to be racing for a minimum of around 12 plus minutes every time you do it. So I would say that race right there should be at least $100,000 base. Now, if we actually have longer events in the game, which are going to be 15 to 20 minutes, as I mentioned, those legit have to be around 150K, man. Like, they can't add something like a long event that's 15 minutes, and then even running something like a buck set, you're only making around $120,000. That is just honestly not going to be enough money from it. Now, we do know in the current long race, I think there's actually going to be a few classes you can pick. So you can run something like a tier 2 and then something like an alpha GP, which is dope. And then you can also run the exact same car the entire time if you want to do it that way, which I would say is honestly pretty dope. Like, if you were grinding out longer events, it would be a pretty dope option to switch vehicles around a quarter or even halfway through it. Like, let's say you want to drive a tier 1 vehicle, that's dope. Switch to something like a hypercar and then even an alpha GP vehicle in a longer race. If it is going to be around 20 minutes, that would probably make a lot of sense there. But there is one thing about this though that I do think is most likely going to hold back the entire big race design. That is going to come down to one thing, the playlist, which I am going to make a separate video about this topic because it needs it. And the reason why I really do want bigger events though is because I miss doing longer races from the crew too, guys. Like, those were so much fun to do. Like, I do know not everybody wants to race for 20 minutes at a time and, you know, most likely make a little bit of money, but you know what's hilarious about that? All the long events in the Crew 2 are always the ones most people grinded for the most money on the single player aspect of it. Like, sure, you can obviously jump on a grand race and make money, but here's the thing, not everybody wants to do PvP, so why not have longer events that players can jump into and do them solo or invite their friends into them, and that way they can actually make more money and stuff being in a separate race with their friends or even being solo. And that was legit so much fun to do back then, like jumping into an event, putting all of your icon points on bucks, throwing on that XP or that fame magnet set because that's what it was back in that game. You actually would make so much more money doing the longer events, and it was so dang fun doing those because you obviously drove all over the place. Kind of similar to like cruising around the map, but you're obviously driving around the entire map, and that way you're actually going to make money while doing it. And the funny part about this though is when I used to drive around back on the Crew 2 a lot, I was like, you know what? Imagine if we actually had longer events that would take me across the entire map. That's also going to give you like a tour type of feeling, but you also make money while doing those longer events and you're technically cruising around. And boom, we actually had many long events that ended up doing that. So I would say a lot of players would most likely love to have longer events. The biggest question is though, are they actually going to add them in the update in November? I would say having an entirely new island, it would make sense there, and also adding a different dynamic of events people have definitely been asking for. Do let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Would you like to see bigger events? I do know a lot of players would probably go, well, yeah, Block, we would, but we also need to have the corresponding pay on them, the XP being increased. And then for me, though, the last thing I would like to see is going to be the legend points being changed a bit. That way we can increase the bucks and XP we get from events. That way it's actually going to make it more attractive to do the larger events and actually get more money and XP from them. But again, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below, and hopefully with that map expansion, we see some bigger events being added.